it's been my highest highs and my lowest lows. You've got to grow quicker than the business, otherwise you become irrelevant. I really started hating what I was doing more and more. I was completely also burnt out. My health really started being compromised in many ways. It was just crunch time, and I just had to be like, I hate what I'm doing. I need to do something else. And I just said, I'm not good at what I'm doing. We need a professional operator. We need a professional manager to take us to the next stage, and rather let my role focus on, what's Spark beyond SA and what are the opportunities for us to do more. On the day, the 1st of April, when it was official, I felt like the world was all of a sudden open. So for me, I am very excited about AI, really being focused on personalized learning. So understand where the kids are, meet them where they're at, and then differentiate that instruction.
Welcome to the Founders at Work podcast, where we unpack real founder scaling stories, distilling the lessons they've learned the hard way so that you don't have to. I'm Jason, your host today and author of Art of Scale. My guest today is Stacey Brewer, co-founder of Spark Schools, one of the most admired education scale-ups in South Africa and on the continent. And Stacey's made one of the hardest calls founders have to make, which is knowing when to hand over the CEO role. And today we're going to unpack her journey, what changed in Spark, and how she's found new energy and purpose in a new role. Welcome, Stace.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and your pleasure. Stace, tell us a little bit about Spark. Give us, Spark in a nutshell, your mission, your battle stats.
Sure. So Spark, we're a network of schools operating here in South Africa. We currently operate 26 schools, and we're educating over 17,000 children across the network, and we're employing about 1,500 staff members. And Spark started in January 2013 with 160 children and 20 staff members, so the journey's been huge over the last, 12 years. And really why Spark started was to address the national crisis that we see in education in South Africa today. We currently spend the greatest proportion of our budget and GDP on education, and yet we ranked bottom of the world if you look at various competitiveness reports. And so what we've done at Spark since inception is we say, how do we benchmark our total cost to educate against what government spends per child to educate in order to provide a model that's affordable to the country, but at the same time, how do we ensure that quality education is delivered? And it's through our learning model that we are able to do it. So we do not screen on academic ability. It's a first come, first served basis, because we're trying to prove that any child from any community can achieve.
And it's amazing. You really are solving one of the most critical problems, societal problems that we've got to crack in this country. So, I mean, well done. I've been a fan of what you've been doing for the last 12 years, and may you 100x your scale. But first, now give us Stacey in a nutshell. So who's Stacey and why did you do this?
So I feel like I've been Spark forever. I feel it's been some of my identity. But really why I did it is I felt a really great sense of responsibility to address a national crisis. I mean, as I mentioned, we ranked bottom of the world in various competitiveness reports. And the most recent PILS assessment, 80% of our grade 4s cannot read for meaning, which means they cannot learn. And so when I was doing my MBA at Gibbs many years ago, it was really brought to my attention, and a professor challenged us and said, what are you doing as the future business leaders of this country to address some of our really big areas that need to be addressed? And so I didn't know if I aimed to open a group of schools or to be an entrepreneur, but I really wanted to seek out a solution, and I have a great sense of responsibility to this country. I don't feel it's just government that needs to sort out key issues, but it's about all of us because it's in all of our interests to do so.
Amazing. Yeah. So that was 12 years ago. Can you believe it? You've been in the trenches now over a decade, funding, firefighting, hiring, firing, culture building. Tell us about the last 12 years, how you've experienced that.
Yeah, Jason, I'd say it's been my highest highs and my lowest lows.
Yeah.
And I mean, the biggest journey is your own personal development, I would say. And so if I look at myself, where we were in starter versus now, I would say completely different human. And so from the beginning, you're just trying to get people to enroll at Spark. You've got no track record. And Ryan and I didn't have an education background as such. And so you're trying to convince funders to put money in. To start a school is not a cheap exercise. So we were able to eventually raise money, but we had many no's. Then you're trying to recruit staff, you're trying to recruit families. I mean, I remember one of the early days of Spark, or just before we were opening, we had a lunch with one of the potential parents, and she said to me, "So where's your first Spark school?" And I was like, "Ramburg," which was obviously a massive area, but we didn't really know where we were going to open, but we were completely convinced on what we wanted to do. And so the journey has been huge, especially with growth. And as a founder, a CEO, I was CEO at the time of the last 12 years, you've got to grow quicker than the business. Otherwise, you become irrelevant. And so you have the various pains along the journey. So running 4 schools versus 8 versus 20 versus 26 is completely different. And so you go from doing everything, so receptionist, debt collector, principal, teacher, whatever you have to do, to now all of a sudden running a massive corporate. And so it's been my exposure to the most unbelievable people globally. I've entered a life that I never thought was possible. Spark's become an organization I never thought we'd get to. But the biggest journey has been a personal journey where you've just had to face the good, bad, and ugly and deal with it. And because if you didn't, very quickly the business would outgrow you.
Yeah. I mean, so keywords I heard there were growth. And I mean, you went from 160 students to 17,000. Thinking about your first school, you got 26 schools now. I mean, that's so not trivial. 1,500 staff. People don't realize how complicated that is. But more than the 1,500, getting to 1,500 through all the
Yeah.
different stages, so much changes. How did you experience your role in the early days, and how like the parts of it matched to your strengths, and how did you experience it, at kind of 1,500 staff, and how
Yeah.
the role related to your strengths and passions?
So early days of Spark, I just love breaking new ground, doing new things, innovating, trying to figure out solutions to big problems. And so at the beginning, you're very much on the ground trying to figure out how do we solve problems. There's constantly challenges. You mentioned all the various stakeholders, having to manage those stakeholders. To along the journey to now where Spark is a big corporate. A lot of it is now policies, process, optimization, and that's just not my game. We need a professional operator. I don't get any energy waking up thinking, how do we optimize this process or, be more cost effective in this area? That's absolutely important.
Yeah.
What I want to do is like solve big problems, break new ground, and think of what's possible
Yeah.
and what's next for Spark.
So you're the classic visionary innovator profile. You pioneer, blaze a trail. I mean, think about what you've done at Spark. I mean, people hadn't done that before
Yeah.
you did, right? You took that from 0 to 1 times this has happened. And so that's a common founder profile. And then you've encountered through the journey, probably with a bit of resistance at first, the the need to embrace systems, processes, policies, procedures, probably a lot of the things that come with a more corporate environment we tend to react against and not want to be part of. But anyway, you've needed it and you've done it. And what I heard is that kind of it doesn't give you any energy. How did you navigate the part of the journey where you needed to be putting in place systems, processes, policies,
Yeah.
and yet it's not giving you any joy?
Yeah, so it's important who you hire, and always you've got to make sure you hire people smarter than you, and especially that people understand what it takes to scale and run a really big organization.
Yeah.
And so that was being a critical factor. But I was also very self-reflective and saying, what got us here is not going to get us there. So it's important that we bring the right talent at the right time. And there's no ways anyone can do any of this alone. And so very much thinking about the talent, the team that we need, and what are the skill sets that we need in order to take us to the next stage. If I was trying to hold on and control absolutely everything,
Yeah.
Spark wouldn't be where it is today. It's just impossible. You can't run it with a couple of people. And so it was just like, for me, Spark is far bigger than me, far bigger than a few team members. And so we need to do the right thing for Spark, because it means we can serve more families in the future.
Yeah, so I think you lived the lesson that so many of us founders have to learn, which is that it takes more than a leader to build a company. It takes a leadership team of
Yeah.
complementary energies and capabilities, and that team needs to start to function as a cohesive unit so that you can do your trailblazing
Yeah.
and take the company into the future. But you also have a team operating the business of today and
Yeah.
making sure that it's excellent at what we do today. Um, yeah, so well done. How did you experience the inner journey And what were the kind of, I guess, the epiphanies, the moments of realization along the way about your role and the role you specifically play on that leadership team?
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm honest with myself, I mean, I probably should have changed roles 3 or so years ago. But the reality of the situation coming out of COVID, you survival mode, you just got to hold on. You know what you need to get done. Doesn't mean it's going to create a thriving organization. But I really started hating what I was doing more and more. I was completely also burnt out. I wasn't playing to my strengths. I didn't feel alive. I didn't feel in my flow. My health really started being compromised in many ways. And then, fortunately, I've got a close relationship with one of the main shareholders. And I was honest with him,
Yeah.
which I was scared to do, probably because I think I was worried shareholders or, the board are going to think she's not committed or just question it. And I just said, I'm not good at what I'm doing. We're not focusing on what's next. We basically like holding on or focusing on today or the next 2 to 3 years. And I believe Spark has so much more to do. And I need to be focusing on what does it look like sort of 3, 5, 10 years time. And what are we doing to remain or ensure that we are internationally competitive and that we're innovative? Because we were so internal for so long and COVID really hurt us as an organization. And so
Imagine.
for me, it was now Spark is at a size that, if honest with everybody, we need a professional operator, we need a professional manager to take us to the next stage, and rather let my role focus on, what's Spark beyond SA and what are the opportunities for us to do more.
There's so much gold in the last 2 minutes of what you said that I want to mine because, I guess you summarized a multi-year, complex, difficult
Mm.
journey and some profound insights, actually. These things apply to so many founders. I mean, I can relate heavily to going through seasons where you're just doing what you have to do, but it's survival and it's not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for the team. Your
Yeah,
health is suffering, relationships are suffering, and you feel like the business is suffering. And there's this paradox because you feel like you're doing what's necessary, right, to get the business to tomorrow or next year. But at the same time, it's stifling the business and you. And you were going through that.
completely.
Well done on that courageous conversation because it sounds like that was a breakthrough moment. The moment you had that conversation and started opening up a discussion about how do you balance taking Spark into the future and unlocking all this potential you saw, but also operating with excellence, what the business was now, led to the outcome, right? Which is we need to split these roles. We
Yeah,
actually need a professional operator to run the organization, and we need me playing in a role that's carrying the organization into the future. Well done on having that conversation. Tell me how you got over the hump, because you were feeling fearful of having that conversation.
Jason, my health hit.
Mm.
I was in such a bad state health wise, and I was completely and utterly burnt out. So to be honest, I just faced the edge of a cliff and was like,
Yeah.
you either speak up or you don't.
Yeah.
But the big lesson there for me is, often as founders, I think we underestimate our position of power, or at least who we are and the role that we play within the business. And my lesson learned is that I should have spoken up sooner
Yeah.
because I do. I think I held the business back in many ways. Yes, we were holding on and it's still going and it's fine, but we could have done a lot more.
Yeah.
And so eventually it was just crunch time and I just had to be like, I hate what I'm doing. I need to do something else. We need to enter a different stage, bring a new energy. I'm absolutely exhausted and I'm really proud of myself that I did speak up. I wish I just did it sooner. And so that's
Yeah.
big lesson for me.
You're too tough on yourself. You didn't just hold it back, you also held it up. And so the business probably wouldn't have got there, wouldn't have survived COVID and made it to the point it did without you holding the line. So well done. You probably should have spoke up a bit earlier, but yeah. Okay, so now you've made the shift. How long has it been since you've been in the new role?
So we hired Earl Sampson last year, mid-June, to then move to the South Africa MD role. And then we started looking at what is Spark beyond SA.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of conversations with my main shareholder and then officially handed over the group CEO level on the 1st of April
Well
this
done.
year.
Yeah.
And then moved into what we call a chair role, but also focusing on the strategic aspects of the business. So really like thinking about what's next.
So it took about a year to manage the transition, and then you've had about 6 months in the new role. And your new role it's a chairman role, and it's around the future of Spark Schools. It's, how do we carry the organization into the future? What's the
Yes.
business model? How do we unlock the full potential of what we can be? How's that feeling?
So I was so happy. Now finally like free and alive. And you could see the shift in me and my friends and colleagues. They saw like all of a sudden my energy was very different. And I got excited to wake up in the morning. I got excited to engage with people. I was a walking zombie for so long and I didn't realize what a bad state I was in. And I could see that major shift. And all of a sudden I felt more in flow. So from a strategic perspective, it's, my shift has been
Yeah.
major, but there's also that emotional side of things which I underestimated.
Yeah.
You do go through a stage of like emptiness syndrome. So what is your value? You've gone from firefighting, whack-a-mole, dealing with a million phone calls, emails, always people want a bit of your time, to now all of a sudden none of that. And your previous value add was like hitting certain numbers. You could see it and it was tangible and immediately. Where now you can't see that as much. And so, well, not immediately, not what I was used to. So I've gone from a lot of doing to now like thinking, which I love the thinking
Yeah.
space. And so that's, I would say it's still a transition. You come out of it in some level of like regret. I should have done this. I should have done more, and probably like very critical on oneself. But it's also time to like let it go.
Yeah.
And to appreciate and understand, say, my strengths and Earl, our new CEO's strengths, and play for it. You need that team. You need that combination. You can't have one without the other. But I'd say it's still a process. There's always dynamics at play, because with any change, it's now the teams. I'm not directly working with them. How do you deal with the shareholders on board? I've gone from an executive presenting to now a chair. So I also know what the CEO is going through. And I also know, like, if I don't agree with something, to speak up. So I'd say it's still a process. But what's really important is my relationship with the CEO, obviously vice versa. And I would say that's a work in progress, just to make sure that we aligned in terms of focus, in terms of support, but also in terms of challenging.
Yeah. Sure. I can relate to so much. The walking zombie is. I mean, I can deeply relate, both in my own journey and also other founders, that we've walked the road with over time. I think so many founders don't realize they're in that walking zombie mode because they're performing a role right now that requires them to be who they're not, and that's stifling who they truly are.
Yeah.
And everybody's suffering, and their health is suffering, and their relationship is suffering, and they haven't had the conversation that you had and made the shift that you had. So what I'm hoping is that founders are hearing the energy and purpose, and the excitement and possibility and the healing and recovery that has come out of like the courageous decision to shift that by shifting roles. And so, just distilling, because there's a new chapter to now explore. The company changed a lot. What it required of leadership changed a lot, from being a pioneer to being an operator.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you were changing a lot, growing as a leader, but that didn't mean that in your makeup, you were what was required in the operational leadership role anymore. And so you confronted that tension, the tension between what the business needs and what you are and what you need, and made a call to find your fit, to shift your role to align to your strengths, passions, and point of highest contribution to the business. And you rearranged the team around that.
Yeah.
You brought in what was missing, and you're now positioned for the business and you to thrive in the season that lies ahead.
Yeah, I'm very excited about what's next. I feel like it's the beginning of Spark again, and I've got so much energy.
And
at
there
what's next.
almost couldn't be a more amazing time for this shift, particularly, how excited I am about what AI now makes possible. And I think there's one sector where I'm more excited about that than any other, and it's the education sector. It's this, I don't know, I mention this example so often because it comes up a lot. The 1984 Two Sigma problem in the education sectors, kind of world-leading researcher proved that one-to-one tuition can shift the outcomes, the educational outcomes for kids by 2 standard deviations, which means that the average child now does better than 98% of children do one-to-one tuition. And he challenged the educational world to find anything else that could have that same impact. And they still haven't. But what excites me about Spark's model is you're barking up that tree. You are shifting the model for education. You're using teachers much more intelligently than knowledge conveyors. And you're helping kids learn at their speed. You're adjusting to what kids need in real time. And I'm just so excited for what AI will make possible for you now. You like your philosophy and your strategy around child-centered education, you can now 100x that.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you're thinking about this and what your plans are.
Yeah. So for me, I am very excited about AI. And the way we're looking at AI in education is how does it transform a system? So a lot of what you see in other education providers or people in the education space are looking at AI being a teacher assistant or a tutor. But in fact, that's not the only way kids learn.
Yeah.
And for us, and since inception of Spark, has really been focused on personalized learning. So understand where the kids are, meet them where they're at,
Yeah.
and then differentiate that instruction. And so what we are looking at is that so we currently do it, but it's not fully automated yet. But how do we create the system that we understand the needs of Jason?
Yeah.
Exactly where are your gaps? What is the way you learn best? So online and teachers are not the only way. So it's peer collaboration, it's independent practice, and then have a specific schedule to meet your needs in terms of not only what gaps need to be closed, but also how you learn best. And then we're trying to take it to another level is match where your gaps are to the skill set and the high level of competence for teachers. So you're not necessarily going to be stuck with one class. You're going to go around multiple grades. And that for me is very exciting. But also what's made Spark very attractive or got a lot of attention internationally is how we are able to do what we do at our price point. And this, I think, is often underestimated. So within this system that we're building is around how do we optimize our teacher time and space, because at the end of the day, those are your big cost levers. And so if you are very smart from an efficiency perspective and a differentiation, you will make sure that children, that gaps need to be closed, are met, but at the most cost-effective model. And for me, this is now scaling Spark beyond us just running schools. So Spark is moving from just being a school operator to now an education business. And how could we be on-selling our learning model into new markets? We are not a curriculum provider. That's not our game. We're a lot of others. And so through the system and learning and understanding you more and more, we will be able to differentiate the instruction more and more. And then the teacher will be able to support your needs, and we'll be able to support their needs in terms of professional development, but in a very efficient, cost-effective environment without compromising on the quality of education.
So let me see if I understood that right and can distill it. So you're using AI, you're excited about using AI to know the child and their needs in a granular way so that the system can adapt to optimize that child's learning journey. But the system for you is much more than classroom and online. It's the whole environment, including the peer learning and the collaborative projects and so on. And you see AI fundamentally transforming your capacity to optimize the system, to optimize the personalized learning journey. Is that
Yes,
right?
you said it way better than me, but yes,
Okay.
that's exactly it.
But there's another important shift in there. It almost got glossed over, but it's a huge business model shift that almost unlocks the ability to scale 100-fold beyond here. Because let's face it, bricks and mortar, like, it's hard to scale. And I'm hearing that you're thinking about the future of Spark being taking your system into other environments. And so this is kind of, it's not being an operator, but it's also not being a curriculum provider. It's being a system provider. And that's so much more than a curriculum provider.
Yeah, no, so it's exactly that. So we would look at partners or partnerships within various countries, but we wouldn't have to open those schools. And so exactly, I'm building out the business plan and the business model in terms of what makes sense. So a lot of what's a cost center, you could say, in our head office, how do we move that into a revenue stream? Because it allows us to do so much more. And no one has scaled their learning system. People scale like administration or sell a textbook or a teacher guide or whatever's needed, but no one's looked at it from a learning model system. So we are curriculum agnostic, culture doesn't matter, language doesn't matter, just, plug in the right system. But the way the ecosystem has to work allows us to do what we do and being highly cost effective as well as being able to differentiate our instruction.
So this is so interesting. In your personal journey, taking the personal lens for the moment, that conversation you had has opened up the opportunity for you to reflect on scaling Spark 100x from here, because now you have the time and space, instead of figuring out how to turn around that enrollment rate in that school, to be thinking about how do we leverage artificial intelligence and what it now makes possible that was impossible until now,
Yeah.
to actually rethink the business model entirely and break the fundamental scaling constraints of brick and mortar. And you wouldn't be doing this, and therefore you wouldn't be on this at the beginning for sure, but beginning of a 100x scaling journey, unless you'd had that courageous conversation and started the journey of shifting your role.
Yeah. I mean, it's gone from, it's a typical saying, working in the business to on the business.
Yeah.
And so for me, I said to our CEO the other day, I said, this is the stuff I love doing, looking at the different talent. I'm spending a lot of time speaking to external stakeholders. I am understanding the global landscape now versus exactly optimizing a process for enrollment. And then that also shows or figures out, like, how can Spark be so different? And so for me, I feel the areas that we can win is to be one of the biggest education players on the continent. And I really want Africa to be put on the map, because everyone doesn't really think about us or is so nervous. I don't know why, but I think constraints really drive innovation. And so we are a very innovative model, serving the mass market, and we have the ability to scale across the continent. Really puts us in a very strong position where you see other education players, they just do acquisitions. A lot of the players are nervous around the innovation because they're like, oh, he's still going to be relevant for the future.
Yeah.
We've had that bottom up approach. And so that's my big focus, is exactly, how do we change or shift the business model beyond just being school operators?
Yeah. Very excited for you. Okay, so Stace, I think we've distilled some very powerful lessons that I hope founders, who particularly those who are walking in those zombie years, who feel like it's hard to get up, it's hard to be excited about what they do every day. Energy's declining, passion's declining, questions about relevance of role, and kind of a hopelessness that there's more sets in, right? And I'm hoping particularly founders who can relate to living through that take away from your story that there is hope for so much more, but often that hope lies on the other side of a courageous decision and maybe a courageous conversation or two, confronting perhaps like the disconnect between what the organization has become and now needs, and what I've become and what I need.
Yeah.
And the need to reconfigure the team for the future and reconfigure my role so both the organization and I can thrive. And I'd say those are the big principles. And I'm just so excited for what's possible for you in Spark Schools now, because you've made that courageous decision. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It took some time.
So let's do some rapid fire questions. Let's give CXOs some nuggets over here. We're going to go through 7 questions, rapid fire style. What book are you reading right now?
Okay, I'm reading The Great to Learn by Kristen Hanna. I actually finished it last night.
Okay, so what book are you reading right now? Just joking. Number 1 book you'd recommend to young founders who are planning to scale?
I think it's called The Hard Things About Hard Things.
Hard Thing About
And for me,
Classic.
just
In horror.
you can cry and relate to it on every level.
So cathartic.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is, as you let your own light shine, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same.
Most underrated skill in surviving scale-up chaos?
Resilience.
Yeah. Persistence. Hardest leadership lesson you've learned the hard way?
Letting go.
One process change that saved the company?
COVID, making hard decisions around closing schools.
Oh, that must have been brutal. If rebuilding Spark from the ground up today, what one thing would you do differently in the journey?
Not raise so much money.
Stays amazing. Well done to you and your whole team. I mean, taken a team to get here. You're representing that team. You guys are doing such incredibly important work and so well. I'm excited to see the 100x, but already what you've accomplished is so special. So well done, Stacey.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
What I love about Stacey's story is how she models the courage to take such a critical but courageous decision. We find so much of our identity as founders in the thing we've built, the purpose we're pursuing. And it's so easy to think that must mean I must be in the operating CEO role, the most hands-on, visible, operational leadership role. And for some of us, that's true. And some of the time, that's true. But very often, we land up getting ourselves into these zombie years where it's no longer a fit. And the decision to make is, how do I reconfigure my role to be bringing my A game again so that the business can thrive and how I can thrive? And Stace role models that so brilliantly. The company will change as you scale. What it needs of leaders will change too. And so the best thing founders can do is find their fit. Know your strengths, know where you're operating at your point of peak contribution, and align your role and the team around you accordingly. So thanks to Stace for these powerful lessons. That brings us to the close of this episode of Founders at Work. If you want more content like this, subscribe, join the Founders at Work WhatsApp group, and we look forward to seeing you on one of those channels soon. Take care.